so 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8's quorum, we're okay, huh? Okay.
Today.
I'd like to call the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission meeting to order. Will you please call roll?
Waters,
Here.
Moran,
Here.
Detrick, McCarty,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Natoli, Sheedy, McGarvey,
Here.
G for Yee,
Here.
Quinn for Dickinson,
Here.
Schmidt for Peters,
Here.
and Walter for McClashen.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Steve, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Oh, sure.
Okay, first item, please.
First item is a closed session item.
Yeah, would you read the introduction too on the
Sure. The meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. This meeting is closed caption and will be repeated on Saturday, June 5th at noon on Channel 14. A video copy will be available for checkout from any library branch, and members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker ID form at the podium and hand it to the clerk, please.
Okay, first item, please.
Okay, closed session item is conference with legal counsel on existing litigation, City of LA, Sacramento Metro Cable TV Commission, and the City of El Segundo versus Pacific Bell Telephone Company, doing business as AT&T California, Los Angeles Superior Court, Central District, case number BC 414272.
Okay,
This should not take more than 10 minutes at the most.
okay, then we're gonna, and it's on the first floor here, Harry? First
Should do
floor?
it right-
Oh,
Do you wanna do it
back
right
in
off
here.
there?
All right, that's fine. Back in the coffee shop. All right. Let's adjourn to the coffee shop. You want this? You want this for the city county, you want me to give it to Steve?
Is there a report out from legal counsel?
I just wondered, thank you. Will you take vice chair?
She asked if there's a report. I don't know.
Oh, there's no reportable action from
Okay.
that session.
We're back in session. City Attorney, is there any report out?
There's no report out.
Okay, next item, please.
Item number 2 is the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission's fiscal year 2010-11 budget and the approval of the resolution adopting that budget.
Thank you. Bob Davison, your Executive Director. I'll try to present this budget as easily as I can. It's a pretty long document, but it's broken up into components, and I plan to present it component by component. And I'll take questions however you want to. We could take questions at the end when I get to the end of a component, or we can take questions at the end, or we can do both. But I did want to tell you that I prepared this budget with a couple strategies in mind. One strategy was to maximize the revenues to the member agencies. This is a pretty similar to probably what I said at this time last year, but you know, times are hard, and certainly extra money going to the member agencies can't be a bad thing. But also, this budget has a new component, component 6. It's a separate component for the PEG fee, which was implemented last year by your commission. In last year's budget, we had the PEG fee, but it was mixed with everything. You can't do that, so we made sure the interest allocated to the PEG fee was accounted for, but with this budget, we're putting the PEG fee into its own fund so that it can be tracked separately. We've also looked for ways, just any ways that we can cut costs, also opportunities to offset costs that are funded by the franchise fees and move those to the PEG fee if possible, and similar to what we did last year with the best net cost. Last year, if you recall, we had about 1.7 million budgeted for BestNet. You decided to use the PEG fees collected last year to fund those BestNet costs, and therefore offset some costs that would have been funded by the franchise fees, and that increased the revenue distribution. So with that in mind, I just wanted to tell you the goals that we were trying to achieve as we prepared this budget, and of course, continuing to provide the good service that the Commission and Metro Cable always provide. I think we could do that even in these times. With that, I'm going to go through the budget component by component. There are 6 components now. The first component is administration and regulation, and just for your reference, that's on page 5 of your staff report. This component shows $833,000 to fund salary, benefits, service, and supplies. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but there's no COLAs consistent with the county policy this year for unrepresented and management, so no COLA is being proposed. There's a half-time clerk that's still that we're still not filling, so we're holding back on filling that position at least until things get a little bit better. And those are just a few of the measures. Some of the major costs in this component are me, $75,000 to fund my cost. But if you think that's not a good deal, then litigation.
You fund Harriet's thoughts for even more.
Harriet Steiner and litigation is $200,000.
What she doesn't give you thoughts, she gives you opinions.
Yes,
That's even more, see?
yes. No, I only give thoughts. So. Yeah. Accounting, which is also auditing, and we're trying to get into the process of doing both the commission audits and cable company audits on a biannual basis, and that's at $100,000. Consultants and professional services at $50,000. That includes Rich Espasta's contract, but that could be other contracts as well. We haven't really come close to this amount in recent years, but we do need the flexibility to enter into consulting contracts. And then also, the last item here is parental member agency video assistance. This is the county grant for upgrades to this board chambers. This request was made several years ago. Because of the budget, I think that project's been delayed a bit, but they've asked us to keep that project on the books. It's too early to tell exactly what this is in regards to whether this would fit in the PEG fee or not, so we've kept it in this component. Cindy Turner, I talked to her last week, and she did say that they're going to be looking at their needs over the next year, and it's likely a revised request could come to your board next year. Anyway, that's component 1. And with that, I'll move over to component 2, which is on page 6, and this is closed captioning. The proposed budget for closed captioning is $200,000. Just to remind you, this is the 3rd year of captioning, and so far I think it's been a pretty good success. And I definitely want to thank Metro Cable staff and Captain Colorado, our contractor, for making it so. Karen could correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't get that many complaints, if any. In fact, if you remember last year, Lois Diamond came to your commission to thank you for implementing closed captioning and basically speaking for the community and saying that you've opened up your not just your meetings, but all the meetings to members of society that couldn't be part of those meetings before. And she was certainly very happy. Just similar to last year, all meetings are captioned other than 3 small contract agencies, and there's technical difficulties in getting those ones captioned. But basically, 90% of the meeting hours on Metro Cable are captioned. And so I think that's pretty successful. And just to give you a few stats, in calendar year 2009, there were 420 hours of closed captioned meetings. wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. There were 420 meetings for a total hours of about 1,151 or so. So we can break that down and see who had the longest meetings and such, but those certainly those are the main numbers. We spent about $138,000 at $120 an hour. We have a later item on this agenda, Caption Colorado's contract. We're going to recommend extending that contract for 2 years. As they did last time, they're agreeing to hold their rates the same at $120 an hour, and we're pretty satisfied with them. And I know we've done some independent searching to see if we're getting good rates, and we think we are. So that item will be on later. So with that, that's the closed captioning component of the budget. The 3 is one of my favorite components. It's the Metro Cable component. We're proposing $435,849 for that portion of the budget. Basically, it's covering Metro Cable staff and equipment, and, well, I shouldn't say equipment too much, because actually one of the things that we're doing here, which is going to be talked about in a few of these components, is we do have the PEG fee fund now, component 6. And one of the things that we did do was, take some of the equipment cost out of component 3 and move it over to component 6. We also had a $150,000 reserve for equipment that we also moved to component 6. Any of these costs that we normally fund out of the franchise fees and that we move over to the PEG fee certainly helps the distribution to the member agencies. So we did that. I have to say that Donna and her staff were a huge help here. Metro Cable looked at their own needs for the PEG fee fund request. They also first, they brainstormed what they thought the different member agencies needed, and then prepared a list and a plan for what requests to be put into this PEG fee. And then they sent it to the member agencies, to the clerks and the city managers and the county execs and others, and got comments. And in some cases, they got, looks good. In other cases, we got significant comments. But basically, along with Karen, and worked with the staffs of the member agencies to develop what you'll see in component 6, which is a plan for this for the funding of different PEG fee requests. So anyway, I talked a lot about what was in component 6. We're in component 3, but I wanted to make sure you understood things are changing a little bit. So a portion of what was funded here is now funded elsewhere. A couple of other things. Metro Cable covered 420 meetings, just like we talked about captioning, for over 22 entities at 12 different locations. I did also want to mention, Bill Piper especially, there was a situation in the city of Sacramento where a switcher went out, and I'm not really technical, so, but I do understand that, that would affect the ability for the city of Sacramento to be live. And Bill was able to work with city staff to do some fixes and such to the point where that problem was resolved. So he really stepped up to the plate and worked with city staff to help that situation.
Really helped a lot.
Okay. With that, we'll move to component 4, which is on page 9 of your report. I'd ask you to turn to page 9 because there's a chart there that you might want to refer to when we talk about this. This is community programming, and this will start to sound like a broken record because what was once funded here, now part of this will be in component 6. So hopefully the table explains it. But I think your commission is aware there's base allocations that go to many of the PEG providers, and then there's also one-time grants that are sometimes approved. If you recall last year, your commission approved the base to be the same as the year before without a COLA, given the hard times. Even though in previous year COLAs were approved, and no one-time grants were allocated last year. Of course, now with the PEG fees and having to spend that money on facilities, Harriet Steiner and Karen worked with the many PEG providers, and one is asked their budgets to be split up into operations and facility components, and 2, asked if, certainly said if they had any requests, they could submit requests to be funded by the PEG fee, and they did both those things. And it was very helpful. So one thing that I want to point out here is the base is being proposed as the same, but we are splitting the base between an operations base and an equipment or a facilities base. And the facilities base is going to move over to component 6. And you could see on the chart that $280,000 is what we would normally have in our base. Can be moved over to the facilities base. Again, we're moving $280,000 over to component 6, which is freeing up some money for revenue distribution and or other things. Also, just want to point out on this chart, BestNet Phase 2 is almost complete. Your commission approved $1.3 million a year for 3 years to fund BestNet Phase 2, and it's going to come in significantly under $900,000 under or so. That's an approximate number. But this, what we're showing in the estimated actuals under the 2010 column is expensive of $2,018,000 on BestNet, and we think that'll be the last payment on BestNet phase 2. Your commission recently this year approved BestNet Phase 3 to be funded from the PEG fees, and that's also going to be shown in component 6. So this will probably be the last time you see BestNet on this component of the budget. With that, I think that pretty much explains component number 4. Oh, I did want to mention RCC-TV did submit a request to us, and typically we have not, your commission has not funded any, the channels there, and they have the channel, and that goes back to the settlement agreement from, I think, 1983. But typically funding hasn't been provided. We think there may be legal issues in regard to your commission providing funding to RCC-TV. They are here today, and I think they plan to address you either during this item or later on. I certainly talked to Ron, who's sitting right over there from RCC-TV, and me and Harriet agree that we'll certainly meet with them. They think that maybe they can change the way they do things, and that there may be some opportunities in the future for them to change the structure a little bit. And so we will certainly agree to meet with them and report back to your commission if something is fruitful from those discussions. But with that, I think we're still of the opinion that, that there may be legal limitations to such funding. Okay. With that, I'll move over to component number 5, which is my other favorite component, which is revenue distribution. Just want to point out a couple things. The revenue distribution that's going to go out next month is quite healthy. It's $11.14 million, and that's significantly higher than the budget of about $9.4 million, and that's for a couple of reasons. One is we estimated franchise fees at a level that was just under the $10.5 million that they had been coming in at. We felt with the economy and such that we should be a little bit conservative. The 2 years before this year, franchise fees came in at $10.5 million approximately. Well, this year we got about $11.2 million in franchise fees, so they actually went up. You know, we were thinking conservatively that maybe with the economy, the franchise fees could go down. But we do have new competitors, and you know, maybe people are staying home more and watching more of TV and buying more packages and such. And so, I mean, I can't speculate on why franchise fees are going up. What I can tell you is, watching franchise fees over the year, it doesn't really follow any pattern or trend. And so we try to budget a little conservatively so that we're not taking money away from the member agencies at this time of the year. But this year, because of the franchise fees coming in at $11.2 million, and also, if you recall, I told you that your commission offset some BestNet costs last year. Well, two things happened. We're proposing to spend more on BestNet in the current year, not the proposed fiscal year, and because we received PEG fees higher than what was estimated, we're proposing that an additional over $400,000 of those BestNet costs be offset. And those two factors together have created a revenue distribution that's more than $1.7 million higher than what was in the budget. And so that distribution is shown on the chart on page 10, and it shows what each member agency would get. After this meeting, assuming that there's no changes to this or taking into account the changes, we'll be sending a letter to the member agencies telling them exactly what the revenue distribution will be and when it will be coming. So just wanted to let you know about that. And in the meantime, next year's revenue distribution, we are expecting that to be about $9.6 million We've increased our estimate of franchise fees to about $10.5 million. Not quite the 11.2 that we got last year, but consistent with with what came in before and trying to be a little bit conservative. And we'll certainly have to see what came in. Also, too, this budget, where last year we had $2 million in offsets, this year's budget doesn't have quite that much in offsets, but it does have offsets, the $280,000 for the grantees, the $150,000 for the Metro Cable Reserve, and even some BestNet costs that weren't spent that were going to be funded, about $900,000, that will now kind of be moved over to fund Phase 3 BestNet. It will also actually be an offset too. So next year's member revenue distribution will take advantage of all those things, and it's estimated to be $9.6 million. Okay, with that, I think I will move on to component number. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. Last year we presented, one of the questions that came from, I believe, Commissioner McCarty was, where's the revenue actually collected, and how does that compare to the Department of Finance numbers? We actually prepared a report for your board that showed you those, what it looked like for one corridor, and now what we have, and there's an exhibit. It's attachment 1 in your report, shows what would have happened after a full year of distributions. Oops, I think my mic went off. No?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there we go. I think Bill had to come out last time to show me that I had to push a button. So I am learning. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but attachment 1 is there. Also, it should be on the dais, is Mr. McCarty also asked for the information to be just shown for AT&T, and we've prepared a chart showing a full years of collections, just showing where AT&T collections are. I don't want to reiterate the whole staff report from before. We're still recommending that we keep the same distribution. However, your commission may feel differently, and certainly I believe that could be changed. But I do want to tell you that it is part of the JPA, so the process for changing the distribution methodology would be a JPA amendment, which would have to go to all the separate member agencies and then come back to your commission. So I certainly want to make sure that you understand that. And with that, I can move on to component 6, which is the new component. And this, like I said before, probably, this is a separate fund, so the PEG fees will now be in a separate fund. Interest earned on the PEG fees will stay with them. Mostly we spent the PEG fee money last year on BestNet. There was a little bit left over, so there's $15,500 that represents the little bit left over and interest that's coming into this budget. And the rest of this budget proposes $2.1 million in PEG fees. Now, what are these PEG fees proposed to be fund? Remember, also, too, is that what staff did here was we worked with a lot of entities. We put together a request. And in this case, we're showing a budget that works. However, these requests are always subject to your commission's approval and such. So in other words, we are presenting here the requests that we got and in a way that they work. But certainly there could be changes to this.
So a quick question, Bob. The 15505 is going I'm reading, transfer to the PEG fee fund. How is that related to BestNet? How
Okay.
is that 15505 going to BestNet, or is it
No,
left over from?
I'll try to explain it simply, though I don't know if it's that simple.
Okay.
When we're doing these spreadsheets, it seems to work, but last year, the PEG fee was the first year of PEG fee collections. And without getting into budgets and actuals, we spent, actually there's an action I'm going to ask you to take today that authorized spending up to this $2.018 million on BestNet from the PEG fee funds. So basically, we collected about, I don't know the exact numbers, but we collected about approximately $10,000 more than the BestNet cost last year in PEG fees. And then with interest, which was about $4,000 to $5,000, this represents the unspent portion of the PEG fee from last year that wasn't spent on BestNet.
Okay.
So basically, $2.018 million in best net costs last year, all funded by PEG fees, which was a good offset, and that's a very good reason why the distribution was higher. This is just the remainder that wasn't spent, and then interest we earned, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was in the $4,000 to $5,000 range. So $15,000 is just what's left over, and the $15,505 is not much. It's basically proof that we didn't commingle these funds.
Okay.
So we did a calculation. We've got a separate fund now, so these funds will never be commingled, and this is the proof that we didn't do it last year either.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, and I'm certainly not going to go through every item being asked for because we've got lists and lists, and we can share that with your commission if you like. But I'll certainly go through the highlights. Like I told you before, and I'll just go from the top of the chart on page 6 to the bottom. As I told you before, we met with the member jurisdictions. We got several requests. We put them together. One thing I noticed, when I got all the requests, including from the member jurisdictions, Metro Cable, the channel licensees, we had more requests than $2 million. So what I tried to put together here is a plan that works for everybody, and it's probably not the only plan, but I knew that for Metro Cable, and I knew for the cities that we're not going to construct all this stuff and get all these facilities in 1 year. So I thought it was prudent to allocate those over a couple of years. And also, in talking to Access Sacramento, they had a pretty healthy request, but I also asked them the same question. Are you really going to do that all in 1 year? And we will have a hard time, fitting this all in. The commission will have to make decisions on what to fund. And Ron thought it was a good idea and agreed that, that their request could also be a 2-year request. By doing that, pretty much the request equaled the revenue. Sounds like it just magically happened, but the 2-year plan basically allowed that to happen. So as I said, with the member jurisdictions, Donna and her staff worked with member jurisdictions. We got many facilities requests. There is a table on page 14 that identifies the money amounts that each jurisdiction would get over a 2-year period. Already I've been asked, each one split into 2 years, but it doesn't mean that you have to only give them half the funding in 1 year and half the funding in the other year. It was simply a way to split the request and come up with this 2-year plan. There's flexibility in funding. There's no requirement that one facility needs to be funded first, one facility needs to be funded second, so the needs will dictate that. So anyway, so for this year, the first year, the 2-year plan shows $193,000 for member jurisdictions. Also, a reimbursement to the city of Sacramento for their switcher that went out. We had some problems in actually trying to provide funding mid-year, which maybe I'll talk about later, but Bill certainly worked with them on some fixes, but they ultimately had to replace that switcher, and we think the reimbursement is appropriate. Metro Cable projects, basically Metro Cable looked at their needs, looked at their control room, looked at their equipment needs, looked at their van and other things, and came up with a list of projects that would be of benefit to Metro Cable. Again, the $114,000 represents the first year of a 2-year plan. I'm also proposing that the equipment reserve that was funded in component number 3 be moved over this component, and that's why it's shown here. Channel licensee base, I went over this once, but now you're seeing where it landed. The $280,000 of the base that's being moved from operations to facilities is shown here. And for example, just to show you, KVIE actually said all of their base could go to facilities, as well as they had some other requests. So KVIE's total request is shown in the base here, and also as one-time augmentation, which is the next section, channel licensee facilities, one-time augmentation. I already told you that Access Sacramento had a $578,000 request for over 2 years. SECC, they have the best, they certainly worked on the best net request, but they're not asking for anything else. KVIE is asking for 48,000 facilities beyond their base. Capital Public Radio has asked for almost 18,000 above their base. And then the best net phase 3, year 1 of 3 that you already approved is shown here at $1 million. We do have information in regards to what's on these lists. These are pretty extensive, but we can certainly share that with your commission. Did you hand that out already?
On the dais?
Okay, so you have that on your dais. Like I said, I don't plan to go through that item by item, but if you have questions and such, we can try and answer them for you. And if we can't, I'll call Metro Cable staff to come out and help me answer them. With that, the total PEG fee fund requests that we got, modifying them with the 2-year plans to help it fit, came in at about $2.1 million. A little bit of contingency, total expenditures of $2.125 million to be funded by the PEG fees we expect next year, plus the little bit of carryover that we allocated to the PEG fee fund. So that pretty much summarizes component 6. And with that, that pretty much is the end of the proposed budget. So I do want to point out, I will ask you that when you make take your action today, that you also show an appropriation of $2,018,919 for the fiscal year 2009-2010 to be appropriated for BestNet. That's over the 1.6 million amount that was budgeted. And that's the offset that I mentioned earlier, but that was not actually part of the appropriation. So it's important that we amend the action today with that. And with that, I can certainly try to answer any questions that you have.
Just one, I'm sorry, go ahead. About the, back to page 10, I believe it is, with the actual money that's going to be going to the different members. Is that pretty close to what it's actually going to be? Or are you looking for a little bit of a change on that?
This is exactly what it's going to be unless your commission makes changes today.
Okay.
So if you approve the budget as presented, this is exactly what will go out.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, but before we go on, I want to thank Karen Liu, who just put in a lot of sweat equity into the budget, and she worked really hard. She's really coming along. This is her second budget now, so just want to make sure she knows that I appreciate the help there.
And Katie Lee's, of course.
And
offers
Katie as well.
lots of support.
Well, I'd like to raise the issue for the purpose of discussion that with the financial difficulties facing many of the member jurisdictions, is it the most appropriate use of the franchise fees to appropriate them to the licensees, or to consider appropriating them back to the member jurisdictions for the various elected bodies to consider how they want to spend that money in a discretionary fashion? I know it's probably a difficult discussion to have, but I think it's an appropriate one to have given some of the budget reductions that certainly the county's facing. I know some of the other member jurisdictions are as well.
And I don't know if, are you posing that to me, or?
I'm posing that as an open a discussion for other comments from other commissioners.
Yeah, I did notice that we are looking at a net zero from the past 2 fiscal years. Everything has been the same dollar amount, and I know that's what got us in fiscal trouble before. Is we have so much revenue, so we spend it all, and I'm not seeing anything really going towards reserve. And I know this is one of the few bodies, and I was told when I got on it, hey, we got money, but to spend it all and not have some consideration towards some form of reserve, or returning it to the member organizations that have experienced some takeaways from the state as well, to backfill some of that thing. So I had some thoughts along that. They really weren't concrete thoughts about how to go about it, but again, to be making huge cuts at some other agencies such as regional transit, 20%, or it's $45 million cut in a budget, and we're laying folks off, and so to stay status quo is that kind of stood out to me as I was looking at this year's budget.
And it's my understanding that we don't really set aside a fund balance or a reserve, because whatever revenue is left over at the end of the fiscal year gets remitted back to the member jurisdictions. So
Exactly my point.
Well, and I know that Board Member Walter brought up an issue. I probably could respond to the reserve question quickly, so I don't know if you prefer I do that. In regards to the reserve, and I'm just basically carrying on how the commission's been traditionally funded, and I believe it's almost been answered up there, is that because there's so much of a revenue distribution that goes in at the end, is that there really isn't a need to have a large reserve, like a reserve for dry period financing or a reserve for salaries and such. The actual expenditure portion of the budget compared to the revenue distribution is relatively small. So in a sense, the revenue distribution distribution acts as a reserve, if you will. You would probably fund your bills before you actually distributed to the member agencies in the end. I never want to get into the situation where we've significantly erred and have to take money back from the member agencies at that time, but that's certainly, you know, what would happen if we were facing that. I don't recommend changing past practice, and especially in these years where setting up a reserve now would be taking money away from the revenue distribution. I certainly am willing to look into that, talk to you about it too, but one tradition, two, not sure it's needed, but and then three, I think it would take money away from member agencies this year. I wouldn't recommend that we do any reserve higher than the $150,000 reserve for equipment and $150,000 reserve for contingencies that is actually in the budget. I don't recommend anything above that. And believe me, I work, my other job, I work on other funds that that come from assessments. You know, we have dry period financing, we have various issues, and you know, so I definitely understand the issue of reserves, but I just don't think it's appropriate here, but certainly am willing to respond to your request or report back on such items if that's necessary.
I guess I would also just add on the issue of the PEG channel operators, that it's been this commission's policy to have them provide budgets based on what we call the base amount. Because of the new funding source this year with the public educational and government fee, we took what we could to move it out of the franchise fee base and into the more restrictive funding, which had the result of freeing up additional franchise fees. It's up to this commission how you want to fund your channel licensees and whether you want to fund them at the same level or at a different level. That has historically been at the discretion of your commission.
Is the PEG fee that was established last year, is that limited only to capital facilities and equipment? Can it be used for operations?
It cannot be used for operations or maintenance.
And Bob, what's the problem with, I'm sorry, Andy. Bob, what's the problem with raising the $150,000 threshold for equipment to maybe $200,000? Or is there a problem?
No, there's no
Because
problem.
things go out.
What was that?
Things go out. Things break.
Yeah,
right?
honestly, in this budget with the PEG fee, we have a much more healthier budget for equipment than we've ever had. So even with $150,000 reserve with the 2-year plan for Metro Cable and member agencies, there is, and I don't have the exact number, but I mean, just for example, we were on a rotation of doing $30,000 grants to each member agency for control rooms on a kind of an annual basis, and it started out with the county, and now it's back to the county for a $60,000 request. And now with the PEG fee, you know, we have a 2-year plan that's going to allocate to the member agencies a lot more than has ever been allocated. On top of that, money for Metro Cable in addition to the reserve. So quite honestly, there's no problem in doing it. If your commission wants to do it, it's doable. We just have to balance where it's going to come from. I don't think it's necessary, and I think, you know, the budget that's presented will work, should work. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody over here? Yeah. Anybody? Go ahead.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on some of these things so I just want to make sure I understand this properly then, related to the component 6, the PEG fee fund. So you got the channel licensees, facilities, one-time augmentation. Am I understanding this correctly that those allocations, since those are capital, that those are not reducing the distributions?
Yes.
Okay, so there's nothing else we can do with that capital money, and so what you've done is really invited, you know, these other folks to kind of identify some.
So the only thing I'll point out is that you can't offset any equipment. We've tried to offset whatever equipment we're funding from the main budget. There may still be opportunities next year for some offsets, but I think we got most of them this year.
Right.
That would be the only thing that you could do is if you had these requests and you had another item that would be a clear offset, then you might have a decision of give them the money or offset something that would create money for the member agencies.
Right.
But I don't think that's happening here in this budget. So I think we've offset as much as we knew about. The channel licensees were very forthcoming in trying to give us budgets that split between operations and facilities. So I think the process worked pretty well. And I have to say, I thought we're going to have more of a fight on our hands. Really, it was just changing some of the requests to be realistic 2-year plans that fit everything under the 2.1 million. So, there wasn't much of a decision there. It was some cases we come and we serve up all the requests, and your commission will make decisions on each request, and you could still do that here, but we don't seem to have that problem.
So as far as the discretion, kind of more in the general fund end of it, just kind of speaking loosely using that word, then I think what Ted was asking then is there an interest from a discussion standpoint to actually reduce the grants to the licensees then that are outside of the more restrictive capital, then? Is that what you're asking, Ted? Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the on page 9, the 854,616 number, or some portion thereof, and I'm just looking at it from a standpoint of policy and prioritization. I'm seeing that the county's share of that full amount is about $336,000, and that goes a long way towards providing services, whatever the board may choose to vote to do with it. I would look at that in terms of, 2 fewer sheriff's deputies we have to lay off in the full amount. But granted, there are consequences to moving that money from the standpoint of the licensees. So, it's a question of prioritization, and where would the decision be made? If we free it up, then the member agencies may be able to decide to send it back to the licensees anyways. But then the decision's being made at a different point in the cash flow.
Looking at the operations base for the community programming, even with the shifts based on the PEG fee, it's a straight line from last year, if I read it correctly.
Yeah, that's
correct.
So, and was the previous year, was that straight line too for the, picking up on your point.
Oh, wait a minute. We had a COLA in there.
No, we did not last year.
Last year, there was no COLA.
no
The year
COLA.
before, there was a COLA. So the bases did increase the year before, I think.
Okay, that would have been 07, 08?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah, I could verify that for you, but
I guess what
Ron Cooper probably knows
I guess my point is, I
off the
think
top of his head.
it seems like the community programming, they've been fortunate not to have to incur reductions from this commission, whereas the member agencies of this commission have had to endure reductions on their base budgets. And this may be an opportunity, like you said, to look at maybe increasing the franchise fee revenue back to the member agencies to help in our budgetary situation.
You done?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks. Couple of things. One would be, I think it would be helpful, Bob, to, and it's probably not going to be done for today's purposes, but certainly in light of the questions, I think to have a little historical perspective as to what they were, what they've been, when, there's been adjustments made over the years, and I think certainly this hasn't been the first fiscal downturn, it's been the worst, obviously. And so I think the legitimate questions, I think it'd be important to know what the COLA was, when it was given, and maybe if you could chart that out. We certainly can revisit this at our next meeting. I mean, obviously we have the ability, counties are going to budget hearings, but distribution's not going to occur. We're talking about the next year's distribution, so we'd have the ability to look at that, although I think the member agencies would have to look at their budgets. But to know what that, maybe you can tell me what the COLA was. Was a 5% COLA that was given in 08?
It was, the COLA that was given, it was the last year that the county staff received a COLA, and I think we used
I
this
believe it was close to
3
3%.
point, okay, in the 3 to 3.5% range.
What I was going to suggest, though, is that, and it goes to a different aspect of the question was asked early on, and that is, and I think you answered in part, and it certainly would give me some level of comfort that, because, again, it's not about having to have so much in contingency or reserve, before we make the distributions, if we've got other needs that go to the businesses commission, and we've got to weigh that out. We have to have enough there to pay the bills, need to budget accurately. And I guess I would offer a suggestion. You've got two different things. You have a contingency and a reserve. It's prudent, obviously, to have a reserve, but this commission does operate in a little different manner in that, again, your distributions either done on a quarterly basis or less or more frequently, depending upon availability of dollars and so forth. That it would seem to me that at a minimum, we could, in light of the fiscal difficulties, look at reducing that reserve. Again, it doesn't put any programs in jeopardy. It doesn't jeopardize anything that the commission does ongoing, because you have the ability, where the cash flows in, if you need to make an adjustment, it certainly would provide a little bit of relief, even if you took that, say you took 125 of the 150 and distributed it. Again, I don't see it in respect to this commission's activities as being anything that's going to jeopardize our operation, because if we run into a problem later in the year, you're going to be back here saying we've got to make a budget adjustment. So that would certainly provide a little bit more capacity to the member agencies who are all struggling with budgets. And I don't think we want to get in a habit of not having the reserves.
Right.
Yeah, hear it?
Yeah. I'm sorry. The 150,000 equipment reserve was franchise fees. It will now be PEG fees.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it did free up the old franchise money.
So that's already
restricted
plugged in?
funds.
Then you're
That's
telling me?
already plugged in.
That's already in.
What remains is still 150,000 contingency on the franchise fees portion of the commission. So
Oh.
there
So
is.
we already plugged that piece in, but then there's, we could reduce the contingency. Again, I would make the same comment, obviously with the additive that you don't have now both, you just have the one, that you want to make sure you got enough operating funds, you make sure we cover the bills, and and have the ability to make the adjustments. But as you said, if the money doesn't flow in, then we make the adjustments, and if it does flow in, you make the distributions. It seemed to me that for budgeting purposes, what this is that you could have a smaller contingency, and say you had a $50,000 contingency. I know obviously you've got legal costs and so forth from time to time, but you can go back into it and you can look at our budget, and depending upon distribution, you can bring in, a appropriation adjustment to this body, and you don't meet that frequently, but $100,000 spread over the member agencies is going to be, it's better than, a kick in the head anyway. So I think that again, you can tell me, obviously you want to do prudent budgeting, and I wouldn't from year to year want to carry too small a reserve, but any dollars that come to any of the member entities, but certainly I'll speak for the county.
It's kind of the antithesis of what Mr. Miller brought up. Do we have any reserves? We almost have no reserves, and there's 150 contingency. Honestly, I don't think it's a big contingency, and I think it will do minimal benefit. But also, do I think that we can get away with it this year? Yeah, if you decided on a one-year basis to reduce that to $50,000, I don't think we would be significantly jeopardizing commission operations.
Well, and if there was any significant, then you got to just say that, because again, I wasn't even asking you to necessarily have to agree with the recommendation, or I want your input. But again, these are unusual years, and if you weren't going to take reductions anywhere else and maintain the minimal level of staffing, I think you do a good job with that with the commission. Certainly the.
And I do want to emphasize that I've really focused on trying to increase the member agency distribution. So I did a lot of scrubbing before it came here. And that's not to say that, I would object to it. And if I did, it wouldn't matter. But I would object in any direction to do even more to maximize the member agency distribution. But we did a lot of scrubbing, and we did a lot of that already. The distribution is quite healthy. Certainly, I don't think that changing the contingency this year, we could, certainly that's an adjustment that could be made. Mr. Walter's idea, traditionally your commission has supported the PEG. I would worry about just taking all the revenue away. I think then what you're doing is you're setting up a situation where they start approaching the different member agencies, asking for similar types of things. One of the things that this commission does is it coordinates all of the PEG into one entity. We talked, it facilitates that process. And I think, in a sense, I think that would be counter to what this commission does and has in the past, albeit it is a strategy that would certainly increase the revenue to the member agencies. And like I said, I didn't take that situation lightly at all. And
Well, my conversation wasn't spilling over to Peg. I heard what Ted said, and I think Howard asked a bit about it as well. But
Right.
certainly looking at the contingency portion, not to run you into difficulties. And again, if we see some need, you have the ability to make the adjustments, because again, this is what comes in based upon the allocations and budgets. So, yeah, it might be minimal, but for the county of Sacramento, that's it's another $40,000. If you were taking $100,000, leave $50,000 in there for your contingency, and other agencies, and maybe $10,000 in one case and a little less. But I mean, it's all additive. And again, I think the distribution, it would be there. The important piece of it, I'll just say from Sacramento County, is that even $40,000, when you look at matching dollars for some of the activities and programs and services, $40,000 in this year and certainly last year can potentially be the difference between a position or two, not necessarily fully funded, but just the matching dollars, even more in some of the cases in public health in some of those areas. And it certainly would go, if you use Ted's analogy, it would go at least part ways to a deputy position. So I think that again, we got a big budget and we got a big distribution based upon population. On the other hand, if I'm using the correct number here, maybe about $40,000, that to me is not insignificant, and it doesn't cut into any programs or activities, which we certainly have that discussion as well. But I would see that might be for this year. And again, I wouldn't want to make a habit of it, because you've been very good about budgeting, and if you saw something out there on the horizon, Bob, relative to incurred cost, and this would be a time to say that. I mean, obviously you gave us making sure there's enough cushion there. We've got some ongoing activities and so forth, but I would be inclined to consider at least moving a portion of the contingencies over for distribution. And again, we're going to true this all up come to the end of next fiscal year anyway. And
That was your direction. We can live with it, I'm sure.
And along the lines of Supervisor Natoli's comment, I was looking, and Bob earlier today, asking you about our revenue side, and wanting to be, on the one hand, conservative with our assumptions. At the same time, we saw franchise fee revenues come in at $11.2 million in this fiscal year, when we had budgeted 10.5, and it's my understanding we're currently budgeting for 10.5 million in franchise fee revenues in the upcoming fiscal year.
Right.
And I'd be interested certainly in the franchisees' perspective on this from a business standpoint. What are they expecting their business growth or shrinkage to be over the next fiscal year? And if they're feeling confident that they're going to see some stability for the next year, I might feel confident increasing our franchise fee revenue assumptions and consider allocating that money then back out to the member jurisdictions as well. Because I think that's a $700,000 number in difference there from current fiscal year to next year. We're assuming a $700,000 decline in revenues. That's what we're budgeting for. So
right, we saw 11.2 is the actual collection,
Yeah.
and we're proposing 10.5 in the budget. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
So.
And we typically do budget that conservatively. I don't think that's a poor practice, albeit it's up to your commission maybe to provide direction to be a little less conservative this year, if that's your desire.
I think we're all facing difficult decisions. Actually, I'd probably welcome a kick in the head over dealing with the county's budget this year. But
what would happen is if we budgeted, let's say, 11.2 instead of 10.5 or 11, and then because of the economy, people started turning in their cable boxes, and we actually got 10 million. Then we'll be faced with the opposite situation that we usually face. We usually have extra money at the end of the year. What we'd have next year would be a situation where we're telling the member agencies, by the way, we're cutting you a little short this year, and we would have to deal with that. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's different sides of the risk coin on that one. So
right.
You want to go, Brian? Done.
yeah, well, just to pick up on what Ted said, if I could, Mr. Chair, just real quickly. Again, that may be another way to approach it too. You could, you even leave your contingency amount in there if you're uncomfortable, or adjust that. And even if you did a modest adjustment, if you took kind of a halfway point between where we were last year and what you're projecting, or you could certainly go to 11 million. And again, if the trends were showing something different, it doesn't help us in our budgets. We will approve budgets at the various jurisdictional levels, but that would provide at least budget capacity that would be a bigger distribution than just cutting the for a 1 year period. Your contingency amount. So I would be open to that too. Again, I don't think we went too crazy with it, but we're not talking about get crazy with it. I mean, basically, you had a pretty good year. You've budgeted, I don't think so conservatively that it's, that it squeaks. On the other hand, we have the ability, you might be able to knock off a couple $100,000 and come in at 11 million, or come in at, even if you came in at 10.8, 10.8.5, something like that. It's dollars that go back to the entities, and it's what you build budgets on. And if it doesn't come true, then you either make reductions or, in this case, broader, just bigger distribution at the end of the year. But I would be open to that too, because again, for budgeting purposes that we're going to be doing in next week, another $100,000 would be twice as good as $40,000 or $50,000, obviously, but it would certainly go a long way. So I would be open to that, and I think we got to have a discussion before we give a budget approval here today. Thanks.
And I would like to, at least, I would hope that we could get some input from the franchisees on what their thoughts are on, why was the growth so significant this year? And I mean, my recollection is I just signed a 2-year contract for my current cable provider, so I'm not planning on canceling that this year, because they're going to charge me $500 if I do. So,
And, yeah, don't get me wrong, I really appreciate the fact that it's net zero, really, across the board for the PEG stuff. But, and it does look to me on page 10, when you look at your estimated, that you've been very, very conservative.
Good job.
And, but you said that's what we have to budget with. And of course, we'd make the adjustment if that went up, but it's my understanding that you've been extremely conservative with that number on page 10 of, 9.7 million? Am I understanding the
Yeah,
chart
last
right?
year was more conservative than this year. This year, just to, I'll
that's not actuals?
get to this quickly. For 2 years straight, we had flat revenues of about 10.5 million. This year, the revenue we just got, it went up to 11.2 million. The proposed budget was 10.5 million, kind of last year's number.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely conservative. I wouldn't say extremely conservative, but definitely conservative. And, obviously they could go the other way, but that hasn't happened in a while, so. And I do like the idea of maybe hearing from some of the companies if they have any thoughts on that as well.
Certainly. Thank you.
Just one more follow-up question. So the way this is distributed, Bob, I assume this kind of comes in quarterly or whatever. Is it distributed that way then?
No, it's because we also have to run the operations and the
Exactly.
office. So we typically do a June distribution.
So you're building this fund up, and then based on what it is, that's for year 09, 10,
Right.
then that's distributed. So I'm very comfortable with exactly how you're doing it, because you're not paying out ahead. Just looking at the percentages though, and looking at the unincorporated county and the city of Sacramento, what's being discussed by Don and Ted will certainly have more of an impact for those folks, and somebody, for instance, the size of Folsom, my city and stuff. But
Yeah.
but I would support anything that they look that again can put a couple $100,000 in their pockets, as far as refining some of our assumptions here and getting some of that just to again help save a position or two that is critical. So.
Then,
Go ahead.
Bob, then the revenues are distributed in June to the licensees as well as the member jurisdictions?
No, the agreements call for the licensees to be paid twice a year.
Okay.
And it's timed so that the payments to them never gets behind the revenues.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's what, like December and then June is when they?
I don't remember. Karen, do you know the month?
Actually, August, and Katie, the February.
August and February, okay.
Are there any other comments? Good.
Just, I don't believe a representative from Comcast is here. They can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that's the case. I believe Tim Ray is here from AT&T, and is SureWest here today?
They're not.
Okay, so all we have is AT&T represented today.
Well, I wish they'd known I was going to be asking this question.
Come on up, Tim.
If they had, Tim wouldn't have come either, so.
Yeah.
I come with no prepared notes today, but I find the dialogue very interesting. I think that one of the things that I can say very candidly is that we are not seeing zero net growth. We are seeing great growth on our UVerse product because it is such an incredible product. One of the things that we are seeing is very little attrition. So we're down under 1% attrition for the people that sign up for our product. People are not signing up and leaving. That's number one. Number two, we're stealing a lot of traffic and competition from Dish and DirecTV. Not, so when our growth, the numbers that you're seeing in that first column on page 6, that $1 million in income and fees, that's not just swapping for dollars from Comcast. That's net adds that we're taking from the satellite folks. So my sense when I'm hearing you guys say that to go down to 10.5 is a little too conservative, I wholeheartedly agree. And also from what Supervisor Natoli is saying, that the way you guys are doing your fees, you can always make adjustments in the disbursements of fees if you see you're going to get in trouble. But I would agree from your comments that the budget is extremely conservative.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Tim?
Tim?
You only get one.
So from a competition standpoint, you're seeing more growth in the landline cable providers and shrinkage for the satellite providers?
I would say that when we take a look at the U-verse television product that we're paying fees on,
Yeah.
we're seeing a sizable growth from people turning away from satellite and coming to the U-verse product. I can't give you specific numbers, but it's safe growth. So that's growth that's not coming from Comcast. And number two, we're not going to be net zero going into this next year. We're going to provide constant growth income in the fees.
Okay, thank you.
Robbie?
Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, Chairman Waters. I'm used to calling you Robbie. You sit next
That's
to me
fine.
at council meetings. Let's follow up with what Ted just asked. That's something we've been talking about for years, as you know. We lament that we can't get a little bit from the satellite services here throughout Sacramento, throughout the state of California, frankly. We're not the only city talking about this. Can you, if you could do any analysis, talk about that? Whatever we can. You don't have to get an answer now, but if you can fire next.
It's something we can look into. Maybe something I could talk to Rich Esposito about. Are there numbers out there that can show? I mean, the concept Tim was talking about, completely understand, and to the extent that the satellite customers choose one of our competitors, and the fact that there's more competition, maybe more people are making this choice. I mean, that's something that could be very realistic. As far as supporting that with numbers and such, I'd have to think on that, but it's something I could look into.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? We have 3 speakers. Colonel Burton? Welcome, Carl.
Good morning, Chairman Waters and members of the Cable Commission. I'm Carl Burton, Chair of the Access Board of Directors, and in the audience today you'll find a number of my fellow board members. I want to thank you guys for coming down here today and giving back up to me. On behalf of the many thousands of your constituents who are members and viewers of Access Sacramento, Channel 17 and 18 in the community and the Voice of Radio, we support the recommendation that your Executive Director, Bob Davison, has presented here to you today. You have all received in the mail a copy of our report. It's a 6-month copy of our report, and if you have any questions about it, I would defer to our Executive Director, Ron Cooper, on that. I would like to bring to your attention, though, the fact that we did go out and we tried to get a grant from the Knight Foundation. We were one of the few finalists out of 2,400 that was selected for further review, but we didn't get the amount in the final end. But we did stimulate a lot of interest in the community from various individuals, and you'll find their letters in here supporting Access Sacramento and what we're trying to do in this community. We are continuing to give voice to our mission, which is to the religious, political, and cultural communities that are sometimes overlooked by our mainstream media. We document community events and athletic competition and share with them thousands of families throughout Sacramento and streamed by the internet. I'm sure that all of you are aware now through our previous discussions that we've had here, how we use the internet and people from all over the world can come and view what is taking place here in Sacramento. During the past several months, we've met with many local leaders, and we've met with KCRA, Sacramento Bee, Sacramento News and Review, Sacramento Press, and they've all expressed support and encouragement for our activities. And as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of Access Sacramento this year. We hope that all of you will join with us in that celebration, and we want to thank you again for supporting us in the past and supporting us in the future. And I look at the clock and I say I have 20 seconds left, so I better shut up.
Good job, Carl.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay, Liz Rhodes?
Good afternoon, I'm Liz Rhodes, Executive Director of SECC and BestNet. Everything that I have to say pretty much is in the packet that we emailed to you and that you have in front of you. The one thing that we really need to say is thank you. I know that this is a very difficult time for everybody, and I think some of the bright spots out there have come from some of the activities that have resulted from things that you have funded in the past. And BestNet, we're very proud of. You know, we're proud of the fact that it came in $900,000 under budget, and a huge thank you goes to Comcast for that, because they were real numbers that were given to you, but everyone worked very hard to bring those down. And I think that the funding that you provide gives opportunity to the schools and the districts to do things differently, and looking at a bright spot in kind of what's happening in our world today is that schools are looking at doing things differently and cooperating more, and the redundancy is not there as much as it has been. And so the technology really brings, you know, activities into the schools that they would not get otherwise. And the other thing, there's a huge cost savings to the district now in terms of what they're not paying, and I say that kind of hesitantly knowing some of the folks in the room today, but there's a huge cost savings that is going to the schools because of BestNet, and also because of how we're able to use the channels and to distribute, especially professional development programs. There's a lot of districts that wouldn't have professional development if it were not for those cable channels. So, you know, my big message to you today is, you know, obviously we believe that the funds that you have spent have been very well spent and have been leveraged, and there's a great deal of appreciation back to you for making that possible over the years. So unless there's any questions about the material that we've presented to you, I just end by saying thanks.
Thank you, Liz. All right, are there any other questions? Don?
I'm going to maybe offer a suggestion here then in light of some of the conversation and see how it flies. I think that in light of what we've heard here today, and I appreciate, Bob, this is no reflection on your budgeting or certainly your good work, because I think you've watched the pennies very carefully, and certainly you, along with obviously all the folks who receive funding, have been very cognizant not only of the significant stress that the parent jurisdictions are facing, but also I think have kept before us the importance. Obviously, if people didn't have a variety of offerings and fare on the various media that get some distribution here, then it'd be one less reason for folks maybe to sign up and take those offerings, and obviously that's what drives this. So I do believe that what we do, certainly in the community programming aspect, but also just generally with some of the upgrades that Liz has referenced and others have been involved in, certainly, and folks that are in the audience and others, I think it's important that we keep our eye on that ball as well. But I was going to put forward that if we were to use the number that you got this year, and the $11,140,000, is that that's the number? Is that correct? That number on page 10?
Sounds close to me.
Because we were using 11.2 to round off, but I.
Yeah, the revenue distribution that we expect to go out in June is the total $11,140,042.
Okay. Well, what I was going to suggest then, that as you were building budget, that if we use that as a base number, and then in addition moved, not the entire, I just talked about 50, go ahead.
Let me just point out, because the number happens to be so close that it gets a little confusing. There's two numbers here. There's the revenue distribution, but there's also the franchise fees that we received from the cable companies. That number is a little harder to find, but I will have it here in a second. And I think that the number was close to $11.2 million, but I'm looking at attachment 2A.
What page?
There's no page number. It's attachment 2A at the back of the report. That one?
Steve's a big help, it's right before 2B.
I found it.
And
That's what I found first, so.
Anyway, if you look at between total expenditures and total financing, there's a line that says franchise/license revenue. You could see that the 09-10 budget was 9.9 million, and that's part of the reason why we have a big distribution this year. Because it was a lot better.
Okay.
The actual franchise fees received is 11.238 or 11.239 million. And then the budgeted for this next year proposed, which it sounds like it's going to change a little bit, was 10.5 million. I just want to point out that those are the numbers that ultimately, when you funded everything that's been allocated, will lead to the revenue distribution. That it's hard to just look at the revenue distribution and shoot for it.
Okay.
It's better to say, rather than tell me to do something to revenue distribution, say, rather than budget for 10.5 million, increase that to X amount.
Okay, well then, that's fine, because and I appreciate that clarification. Well, I was going to suggest that, and again, I certainly credit Mr. Walter for bringing the item up. Maybe go to 11.2 and leave your reserve alone, because that would be an area that I guess I would, for one, say that if we came up a little bit short at the end of the year, we certainly can make some adjustments, see where we are there, but leave you at the 150 as you've budgeted, and take this to the 11.2. For our budgeting purposes, which would mean for a bigger distribution, certainly. And again, we're going to chew that all up, and if it doesn't come to pass, then, you'll keep us apprised if there's need to make mid-year adjustments, and leave your reserve in this case alone, but that would be in one area. If at the end of the year we came close, but not quite close enough, we could certainly make the adjustment, move it from our reserve into, the contingency into.
Surplus, whatever you like.
Because it gets distributed anyway, so
Right.
that would be my suggestion, I think that.
And just to clarify, that would increase the revenue distribution by 700,000. I think most of you can do the math, but.
Yeah, and just the other point I would make is that I'm not, the point's not lost on me, but I think we could spend a lot of time, you're talking about distribution to the folks that actually get it for the programming and so forth, and if people want to have that conversation, I'm okay with having a conversation, but I think in years past, we've made some significant reductions in some of those areas, and it may be somewhat flatline. On the other hand, they are, in my view, part of the reason why you have a cash cow that pays distribution, obviously the structure we have in the ordinance and the law, but that programming is an essential part of what we do in this community, and I don't want to undermine that too much, recognizing that every dollar, certainly when it comes to general fund for our county, can be critical services, but I think having $700,000 more to distribute, significant, that would mean about $280,000 to the county of Sacramento, so that would be a significant improvement, and I think that I think we can live with it for this year, so that would be my suggestions.
Is that in the form of a motion, Don?
Yeah, I don't want to have any more discussion, so, yeah. I'm prepared to make a motion, Ms. Moran.
And I would certainly, I'm comfortable going to 11.2, just in sitting here thinking about it, and after Tim's comments, it kind of dawned on me that, if people are moving away from satellite providers back to the landline companies, it's probably because you can get your internet and your phone with your TV, get a bundled deal, and save some money. So I can't imagine why people, aside from certain programming you can get on satellite that I just thought you can get on current cable providers, hopefully people kind of look at that savings in the long term and stick with it, and we'll be better off for it. Certainly comfortable going with the 11.2. I am open to considering reducing the contingency by some amount. Maybe, I'm looking at the numbers for the county. The county gets 39.6% of whatever's distributed. I'd be willing to, I'm open to discussing, I'm open to looking at reducing the contingency by 100,000. And, do we look at thinking about the fact that the licensees, I think, sitting here thinking about this issue further, the licensees are certainly a draw for why people would want to be on a landline as opposed, on land cable as opposed to satellite, because that program is not available on satellite.
Channel 14. That's
Channel 14 is not on satellite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm never going to have a satellite, because I can't get enough of Channel 14 when I'm at home. And my wife, well,
and that was one of the last discussions I think you and I had before I left the commission. Before was, how do we get the government channels on the satellite providers? And I guess there's no way.
Yeah, my
I've seen
wife knew I had a
no.
problem when I woke up on a Saturday morning to watch the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum on Channel 14. She was wondering what was wrong with me. Supervisor, I thought you did pretty well in your in your debate there.
You didn't stick around and check me out?
I think I did.
Okay.
So anyways, but I would like to at least consider maybe a small reduction, see if maybe we commit to a percentage, but not to a final budget to each organization, but ask if we could look at a 10% reduction in the licensee allocations, and at least then open that up to have staff work with them to see if that could be feasibly done without tremendous difficulty and impact to operations. I don't want to assume that it could or couldn't be sitting here right now, but I would like to at least have that be available for consideration.
Okay, I could only speak to the budget side of that.
Sure.
It's math that can be done. You
Right.
have to talk to the channel licensees as far as how that would impact their operations.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to know how it would impact their operations, the various operations. I mean, I'm just sitting here, I'm looking at, in particular, the Game of the Week programming and wondering on that one in particular, not that it's not a great service and a great programming, but from a standpoint of service provision, at least for the next 12 months, is that the best expenditure of the franchise funds for the people who are paying those fees. So, but I guess I'd like to get some more information on what that would mean as far as the impacts to, if $85,000 is reduced out of that $850,000, what's the consequence of doing that?
Okay.
Okay. Any other comment?
Is that a motion?
So, well,
Don's got
Long
one.
one.
Yeah.
Is that a second?
yeah, well,
Well, if you want to put a motion forward, Mr. Chair, I would be willing, again, I don't want to take the floor from you, but I'm prepared to make, I would put a motion forward and that we budget for, again, I think it's the contingency part of it, I would move $750,000 additional distribution. So if we, however you get that number, whether you want to increase the budget by, the amount or take it from contingency, I think leaving $100,000 in contingency at a minimum, that would be at $750,000. So that would be my motion, would be to increase our projections for the estimated available to 11,250, I guess, would be 11,250.
Yeah,
Or actually, the 50,000 would come out at 11,200. It just be directed to 50,000 would come out.
11.2 and a $50,000 reduction in the contingency.
Yeah, okay, that would be my motion. And then as to the request relative to more information, I think we certainly asked to provide the franchisees and the community programming to give us some estimate. We can make mid-year adjustments, but I think we need to have budgeting purposes today, and I'm not prepared to make any adjustments to those just on the fly here today. I think we need to give some solid dollar numbers for the jurisdictions to work with as we all go into the budget determinations this month. So that would be my motion again, and I would certainly, if we're going to have a report back and hear from folks, we certainly could do that. We can make those adjustments later on. That can be a part of any distribution ultimately at the end of the year. But I just think we're doing it on the fly here today, and I'm not prepared to do that.
That's fine.
Okay.
Here's a second.
I'd second that.
Could I, before you,
Go ahead.
I also want to make sure that in the motion, well, I'm suggesting that you put in your motion to appropriate for the current fiscal year, 09-010, $2,018,919 for BestNet. That allows us to offset the full cost of what we expect to pay for BestNet this year. And in the budget was, I think, $1.6 million. So that allows us to fully, that if we didn't make that motion, we would have a problem with the revenue distribution that's also in this budget.
Okay.
And I didn't see that when I prepared the budget, or I would have put that in the staff report.
Bob, I got to amend my motion to include. I was just kind of a discrete issue about what to use for our number, and then I wasn't. If we wanted a full motion to approve the budget, but I didn't know there was other discussion about other elements. This was just a critical piece of it.
Sure.
If you think that should be a part of this motion to make sure it's clear about the assumptions for BestNet, then I would amend my motion to include what you've just said relative to that. If the seconder agrees, when we've got, and to keep that discreet relative to that piece,
Yeah.
then we come back for the full
But
budget.
I think I would hope that we would specify in the motion that the $750,000 that we're taking both from contingency and then adding into our assumed revenues, that's specifically to go to member jurisdiction distribution.
Yes.
That's
so-
that was presumed. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Abstain? No? Hearing none, that passes. Next item, please.
Do you need a full budget? Did a full, was it?
Do you want to approve the full budget? I'm not sure that your motion included the
No,
full
it didn't. I
budget.
didn't do the full. I just made it discreet in case anybody wanted to break it out, Mr. Chair. So is there any other comments about budget?
What?
I don't know if you want to entertain those. If there's not, then I would move that we adopt the budget as amended then with the motion. And if you want to get some more information back, we certainly can get that relative to the.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? No? Hearing none, this moves. Thank you, Don.
Okay, then I don't know if you want to take all of the agreements that go with your budget individually or as individual items as listed on your agenda, or do them together. There's a series of agreements that are listed as separate items.
Okay, I believe the budget resolution also approves those agreements, and then there's a later item for the channel licensee amendments.
Okay, well, maybe we should just go item through the budget at that point.
Yeah. So, there are channel licensee annual funding and performance agreements that were part of the budget resolution that was just adopted. And then, later on, there's another item for the,
If you need clarification for the record, I would just, that unless there was any dispute about it, that it included, when we did the budget, it included those attachments that were a part of that, acknowledging the modification we made on the prior motion that was incorporated, and then obviously there was a request for some additional information. But I would clarify that, and if there's any dispute, people can speak up, but I would make, so it's clear for the record, included the attachments as part of that, so.
Okay, thank you.
thank you, and I think that's clear.
That's second.
Okay, all right. Vote once more then, Harry.
Sure. Want another vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that moves. That moves.
Okay,
Next item, please.
Item number 3 is the approval of an agreement for management services for the commission with the Sacramento County.
Bob, go ahead.
Okay, this is kind of related to me. Two things. One is the agreement between the county and the commission for my services has expired, so this extends that and basically says it's a 60-day termination from either side and doesn't have an expiration date. I honestly didn't realize that the agreement expired. Number 2, the agreement was written specific to my previous position, which was the manager of special districts. I'm now the chief of the Development and Surveyor Services Division, and so this makes both those changes. And with that, I can certainly answer any questions you have.
Okay,
Congratulations.
on that.
I'll move
Thank
the
you.
item.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that moves. Next item, please.
Get his signature before he changes his mind.
The next item is relatively related to the budget. We just discussed this, but the second amendment to the channel licensee. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you read the item in?
No, she hasn't.
Okay, let's have you read the item in.
Sure.
I almost read it in.
Okay. Item number 4 is the second amendment to the channel licensees, operations, and channel license agreements.
This is basically a simple change that extends these agreements to, Harriet, how long?
To 2012.
2012?
2012.
Okay. Okay,
So the item?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that moves. Next item, please.
Okay, item number 5 is the amendment of the executive director's delegation of authority.
Okay, and basically, this is increasing my delegation of authority for contracts from 30,000 to 50,000. Honestly, you know, if you don't want to approve it, no sweat. I'm not going to be too concerned about it. We did feel that there were situations like the city of Sacramento where some equipment things came up that we didn't have the ability to solve the situation fast enough because my delegation was too low. So from that, we were suggesting an increase from 30 to 50,000. I'd still have to report any contract or anything I approve to the chair and also report it out to this commission at the next meeting. It just changes the delegation amount from 30,000 to 50,000.
And then the aggregate amount for the year is from 100 to
Not to
150.
exceed 150.
Right.
I still get three shots.
Okay. Any comments?
Seems reasonable. I move the item.
Second.
Moved second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none. Next item, please.
Okay, item 6 is Captain, here I go again.
He's
Item
moving
number
along.
All the time off
She does a great job.
has affected me, so.
6 is the approval of amendment to the closed captioning services agreement with Caption Colorado.
cutting into Karen's TV time. She gets to read that in, so she gets a spotlight.
I apologize, and the ratings go up when she's on, not when I'm on, so. And we talked about this during the budget presentation, so we are recommending that we extend their contract 2 years at the same rates, at the same provisions, and I recommend that you do that.
A motion?
I'll move the item.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, move on to the next item, please.
Okay, item number 7 is the chair and vice chair election for fiscal year 2010-11.
Okay, and basically this will be for you guys to figure out, but just let you know that in the staff report under tab 7 is a historical showing of who's been chair and vice chair for all the years. There's been kind of an informal rotation that would go county, city, small cities for both the chair and the vice chair. And for example, Commissioner Moran is the vice chair now. If you followed the rotation, the chair would be the small city's turn for the chair, and I believe it would be the county's turn for the vice chair. However, you've broken pattern before, and it's completely up to you. You can break pattern again, and with that, I'll serve it up to you, unless you have any questions for me on it.
I thought the rotation was county, city, county, small city, and waters, and that was the rotation.
Just checking these off.
That sounds like a law firm.
Been here 5 times.
Commissioner Larry went a second time, and if Chair Waters would like to.
No.
Well, I would nominate Mr. Moran for the chairperson, with our thanks to Mr. Waters, but I would nominate Andy Moran.
Second? Is there a second? I should say.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that moves on. Next part of the item, please. Vice Chair for the fiscal year 2010, 2011.
I'd like to nominate Steve Miller for vice chair.
I've already been vice chair.
Well, you can do it again, then you
Get
can.
in line. Maybe you
Did
be
a
chair.
darn good job, too.
If you talk to Mr. Waters nice, maybe you get to be chair, see?
Catch up with Don and I.
I would second that. I wouldn't have a problem putting the 4th District cities in control of the commission.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? You're not going to oppose, are you?
I'll say yes.
So you'll be chair next year, and the year after, I should say.
And,
All right.
I mean, talk to Mr. Garvey. Mr. Garvey's been kind of quiet down there, but if you want to get into running here, Bob, all you
I'm
do is...
almost here, you know.
That's why he's being quiet, I assume, but...
Yeah, they got to get to 75,000, which they're going to be close to.
That's right.
I do have an election to get through.
Okay. All right, so with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Noes? Hearing that, move on, please, to the next item.
Congratulations.
Here we go again.
Is the verbal report from staff regarding commission business matters.
Okay, Bob?
Okay, I don't have too much here. Normally, this is where I would talk about the Sunset Study Status Report, which is something that's still going to be worked on. I gave a pretty extensive report 2 meetings ago, so I'm not going to repeat that now. This will be worked on this year. I've been out for a while, so I think maybe the timing of this might be delayed a little bit, so I'll probably report on this in more detail at the next meeting. Also, just want to let your commission know that the county auditors have audited the SMCTC for 3 years, the fiscal years ending June 30th of 2007, 8, and 9, and that is likely to be an item on a future meeting, possibly the next meeting. Okay, and also I'm recommending that your board cancel the July 1st regular meeting, and there's a resolution doing so. I don't think we would have a quorum at that meeting.
No, we wouldn't. Okay. Motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? No?
With that meeting, meeting canceled, the next meeting would be August 5th. I'm hoping actually we can go all the way to September, but if commission business, I'll coordinate with the chair and figure out whether it'll be an August or September
Okay.
meeting. But there's likely to be one in one of those 2 months anyway.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item number 9 is franchisee status reports. Speaker slips. Katie, did we get any speaker slips?
On item 9, I don't see a speaker slip on for item 9. Pardon me? Number 10, we do have, but do you have one for number 9 there?
I don't have any speaker slips.
Okay. All right,
Okay, item number 10 is channel licensee status reports.
okay. We do have one signed up, and that's, well, actually two, excuse me. Liz Rhodes first, and then Ron Cooper.
Good afternoon again, Liz Rhodes, SECC. Just real quickly, I know it's late, kind of a follow-up to my last comments about the thank you. One of the bright spots this year was our annual SIVA Awards, and some of you were able to see it, and maybe some of you have watched it actually on cable. We outgrew the theater we were in last year. We had 1,300 people RSVP and say they were coming. It was a banner year for us. The students were excited, the teachers were excited, the family was excited. And I just have a real short clip I'd like to show you for those of you who are not there to maybe get a flavor of it. So if we could roll that tape or push that button or whatever it is you do back there.
When I first got this class, I was a little scared. I didn't know like the whole behind the camera thing. And Coach was like, "You're a reporter," and I was like, "Okay," and I did it, and now I love it. It's like it comes once I get in front of the camera, it just happens. Like I enjoy it. It's fun.
I'm proud to say I have never texted one time in my life.
The life skills they get from learning in a movie, you know, I mean, I struggle with the technology. They can whip it out much faster than I can. I'm like, wait, don't touch it. You know, you can always fix it, Mrs. McKillop. All right.
We just click and drag.
And we're going to show you how to make a movie.
The first thing you need is a script.
Preferably a good one.
I put a lot of humor into it. I thought it was pretty good. I've only heard good things about it, but I haven't showed it to many people.
Well, we had a false start, but now we're really ready to begin. We're gonna get into the real heart of the woods. It's true wilderness.
Oh, hey, Joey. Hey, Bob.
Definitely filmmaking has so many educational aspects to it, not just the messages that you're showing through your videos, but working with others, learning to operate technology, scripting, storyboarding. It's all a big educational experience.
I like the SIVA program because, I mean, it's a good way. It's like a good competition, and it's also a good way to have fun, be able to express yourself, and be able to make something that you can say, that's mine, I did it, that's what I like.
Welcome to the SIVAs.
And it makes a huge difference in the school. There were entries from every single district this year.
Super
So,
job again, Liz.
Phenomenal, thank you.
Thank you. Good. Okay, Ron?
Ron Cooper, Executive Director of Access Sacramento, and again, our thank you and appreciation for your continued support. On your desk up there is also the, every 6 months we send out a copy of the 6-month report that we give to you, to the members. And this particular edition includes the ballot for election of 6 of our members of our boards of directors. So please consider yourself invited to vote and send it back in. You're also invited certainly to our June 17th, it's a Thursday night annual meeting. 6 to 7 is monthly business, and then 7 to 8 is live on Channel 17 with our annual report to the membership. And a couple of great things following up on the excitement with the SIVA Awards. On May 22nd, we, working together with UC Davis, Department of Education, and KCRA Channel 3, hosted the first youth media for social justice gathering in the Studio B of Channel 3, and it was orchestrated so that teen projects, there was 11 different projects highlighted, teen projects were presented, and the teens themselves were both involved in the projects and also in the audience. And it was not only a great partnership with UC Davis and Channel 3, it really opened the door to what hopefully is at least an annual event. The next one will be after the first of the year with the Sacramento Bee. And what's happening is that traditional media is going through its own challenges, as we all know, which leaves them open to consider new possibilities. And with your help and support over the years, the community dialogue that we've created is now increasingly attractive to commercial media outlets to understand what's going on in the community, to help us with our neighborhood news bureau concept, bridges television, radio, print journalism, online journalism. And so these funds are stimulus to challenge traditional media here in your county to re-examine how they do business and how they incorporate your constituents' voice. And the fact that the Access Sacramento TV crew was inside Studio B being helped by union Channel 3 staff to do a youth media event is unprecedented in the nation. And then the final coup de grace was that signal was live for 2 hours through our equipment on KCRA.com to the world. So these are unprecedented changes that are permitted only because of the kind of latitude and the experimentation that we're able to do, and we really appreciate that opportunity. And for any of the commission members, if you ever have questions of us or would like more clarification, for example, Mr. Walter, in terms of the way that the grants are used, and certainly happy to meet at any time, any place in order to clarify that. And then just one thing in conclusion, now that Tim is gone. In looking at the fee structures, and I'm looking nationally, I see 3 factors that I think are causing this revenue to continue. So I really appreciate what Tim said. I absolutely agree with everything he said. We also referenced early on, in a down economy, folks don't go out to the movies. Timed with new services, for example, Comcast now introducing Xfinity, which doubles the number of HD programs, doubles the number of on-demand programs. So folks are staying at home, watching those services, and again, 6 of one, half does the other, fees are increased because of these increased services. So even if, and Tim was making a strong case that they're eating away at satellite, even if satellite in fact is adding numbers, the increases in the services being provided and the increased revenue for those services for the landline is why you're seeing this increased rates. So it's not as simple as, well, what percentage of satellite is eating into the potential revenues in the future. The cable industry on whole, on a national basis, I think last year their total revenue increased 20%. So there's nobody in the cable industry is concerned about the future. They're all very, very pleased. And again, the revenue stream, I think, is secure. So if there's no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, thanks, Ron. Okay, next item, please.
Okay, item number 11 is public comments on matters not on the agenda. I don't believe we received any speaker slips.
Okay. Next item, or is that the?
We adjourn.
I close my binders. The chair and the board going to comment now?
Sorry?
Is that the chair and time for the chair and the board to comment? 'Cause I closed my binder, to be honest with you.
If you wish.
You can do whatever you want, you're the chair.
How about if I just say we're adjourned? There's no question.
I'd like,
Oh, Q, sorry.
I have one.
Do
you want to go first?
Go ahead, Q. You're first.
My question was to Bob. Bob, I actually wrote myself a note earlier and I looked over it. DIFCA. Can you tell me a little bit about DIFCA?
Oh. How much time?
How many hours would you like to go home for dinner
Digital
tonight?
Infrastructure Video and Competition Act implemented state franchising, basically set a template for the state in regards to franchising so that cable companies don't have to deal with multiple jurisdictions getting different deals all over the place. We had a real good process in place, but other entities didn't. DIFCA was approved. The AT&T came into town under the state franchise. That allowed the other cable companies to opt out of their local franchises onto state franchises. We're now in the situation where all of the cable companies in the SMCTC boundaries are on state franchises, with the exception of Comcast and Galt. AT&T isn't doing business in Galt, and our local franchise still exists in Galt. I don't know if that's as much as you wanted to hear, and that was kind of quick, but I'd be happy to come talk to you and talk to you a lot about state franchising, because certainly you weren't on this board at the time we went through it, but there was quite a lot of activity in that regard, working on how state franchising was coming about, providing comments, and then working through the ultimate implementation, which even ultimately led to the 1% PEG fee that we have in place now. That was one thing we didn't have before that was authorized by state franchises.
Okay. I look forward to talking to you a little bit more about it later.
Okay.
Not necessarily today, but later.
That's fine.
How was that for a quick?
That was great.
Good idea.
Great
Q. Tim,
synopsis.
next speaker.
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome our executive director back. It's great to have you on the other side of the dais, and I think everyone here missed you. I know that as Supervisor McGlashan's chief of staff, I also missed having you on the other side of the phone when I was getting beat up by cemetery districts the last, year or so.
Yeah.
But no, it was just tremendous to have you back. And continued prayers and well wishes for your family, though.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been quite a year, but
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Okay. No other ideas or questions? We're adjourned. I thought you were going to say something.
Thank you.
So I'm adjourned.
I didn't know you.